received acclaim throughout time. The first documented Miss South Africa was Winnie Commons in 1926. In 1910, 4 beauties represented South African women in a majestic pageant to celebrate the Union. In 1948, the then Prime Minister, General Smuts, crowned Anneline McCrystal as Miss South Africa in the Johannesburg City Hall. Early Miss South Africas were chosen by public voting and judging of photographs in the press, as well as audience applause in dance halls and cinemas. Today, computers keep score, and Miss South Africa's coronation is a spectacular TV pageant. The Miss South Africa contest has thus far produced 2 Miss Worlds, a Miss Universe, and a further 9 girls placed as princesses. Our previous racial laws only allowed white girls to enter this competition, and this racial discrimination resulted in South Africa being banned from taking part in the Miss World pageant from 1977 until 1991. This documentary salutes those who reigned as Miss South Africa from 1953 to 1994. Some you may have forgotten or never known. In our search to find what happened to them, it was discovered that many made it in the wider world, while others, mostly by choice, faded into obscurity. Now meet some who reigned during these past 5 decades, like Ingrid Mills, Miss South Africa 1953, who owns these stunning legs.
We didn't have any crowning ceremony, which I missed. I went down to the office to see Mr. Stodel, and he said, "Congratulations, you Miss South Africa." And that's how I was told. I wasn't crowned. I didn't have all the ceremony that, all that sort of disaster. I was the last Schlesinger organization, African Consolidated Queen, Beauty Queen. And then there was a lull, and then the Sunday Times took it over.
The great Universal International Studio of Hollywood are hanging out the welcome sign for a girl in South Africa. The winner of the Hollywood Beauty Contest, organized by African Consolidated Theatres Limited. African Consolidated Theatres Limited are giving the public the opportunity of making their selections. Preliminaries are being judged in cinemas throughout the Union. There's still time for you to enter. Someone must win. It may be you.
In 1954 and 1955, no contest was held, and Norma Foster was crowned in 1956. Lovely Adele Kruger followed in 1957.
I was taking French lessons with a German professor, and his daughter was a photographer. And she said she wants to take a few photos of me so that she could send it to a photographer's competition. So I'll post for them, and she took them. And then a few months later, a journalist from the Sunday Times phoned and said I was a finalist in the Miss South Africa. I couldn't believe it. It was the last thing I expected. And then my mother was horrified, So anyway, he said he wanted to come and take some more photos because those weren't very good. So by then I got used to the idea, and then he came and took photos, and the next thing I heard I'd won it. There was no pageant like there is today.
Adele Kruger scooped 3rd place in the Miss World contest. She fulfilled her dreams of modeling when Miss World sent her to Paris. And although she was courted by many men, she never married, and now lives alone with her cat and cherished memories. And then Penny Coelen, who became our first Miss World.
There was no pageant as there is today. Girls entered their photographs and were chosen by public vote. Yolanda and the Sunday Times were the sponsors of this competition. And so I was met by Pete Bierkus, who was the editor of Die Landstem at that time. He phoned me up and said, "Penny, you are the new Miss South Africa." So it was really as easy as that. I didn't have to go through any parading in front of judges and, all that sort of thing that the poor girls have to do today. It certainly changed my life. Obviously, having been chosen Miss World opened so many doors for me. And I think there must be a huge big difference between Miss World and being Miss South Africa. After all, you're now representing, the world beauty. And it's been absolutely the most amazing experience. In fact, 40 years down the line, or even 41 years now since I won the title, I've had so many wonderful experiences and opportunities and invitations, which I probably would never ever have had I just been Penny Coelen.
Miss South Africa 1959, Moya Meaker. Her pilot father flew her to London for the Miss World pageant.
I went back nursing in my 40s to finish the training that I hadn't finished when I won the competition. I was actually nursing a patient when they came and told me I was Miss South Africa. That wasn't very easy because there were a lot of people in the fraternity that didn't think it was the right thing for a nurse to have entered and won a competition. And when I went back, I found it was difficult for my tutors to relate to who I was because they knew who I was. And so there was a role conflict. I wasn't just a student, I was Miss South Africa, ex-Miss South Africa, and I was a student. What was I doing back nursing?
1960 saw Denise Muir representing us at Miss World. She died in 1992. Yvonne Hulley won the title in 1961. Her successor, animal lover Yvonne Ficker, came fourth in Miss World 1962.
I entered Miss South Africa because I'd been a model and I wanted to carry on my career and persevere in the modeling thing. I won the contest, went to England and was a finalist in the Miss World contest. When you came back, you were forgotten. You had done your stint as the Miss South Africa. My successor I never met. There was no crowning for the Miss South Africa in those days either.
Auburn-haired bank clerk Louise Crafts was crowned in 1963. Beautiful ballerina Vedra Karamitis tragically ended her life. Carol Davis represented us in 1965. Clinical psychologist Joan Carter talked to Oxford students about beauty in 1966.
For me, it was a great honor to represent my country, to go to London, to take part, to be amongst all these other beautiful girls, and to experience the whole setup of being Miss South Africa. I didn't go through the whole experience of being Miss South Africa. I left halfway through because I went to the United States. I only had a few months of being Miss South Africa, and then I was in the USA.
Disa Davenstein's beautiful hands paved her way to becoming Miss South Africa. Mitzi Stander, who appeared in several local movies, died tragically in a car accident. Linda Collett now lives and models abroad, while Gillian Jessup became a blonde for the Miss World contest. Monica Fairall followed.
With hindsight, I now see the Miss South Africa experience as one of the most profound catalysts for change and for personal growth in my life. Because if you think of winning a beauty contest and being in something like the Miss Universe or the Miss World, it's a very extreme expression of woman as the body beautiful. And I thought, well, now what happens when I start to get older and all of these good looks are no longer available to me and things start to sag and droop and all of those things that inevitably happen to us. It was really about saying, where is the real me? So I kind of reacted a bit extremely after that Miss World competition, and I cut all my hair off and I threw my makeup away and I even allowed myself to put on some weight. And it was really starting to look for the real Monica, the whole Monica, because we're not just physical beings, we're emotional beings, we're mental beings, and we're spiritual beings. And I believe that our journey in life is to try and bring all of those together. So I'm actually very grateful to the beauty contest experience, the beauty contesting experience, for actually giving me that platform.
Next came Stephanie Reinecke.
My year as Miss South Africa was actually an awfully long time ago, but of course feels like yesterday. It was before the professional beauty pageant era, and very much regarded as an adventure, bit of a lark, although we did have sponsors, and I did win lots of lovely prizes, including a car and a trip to the Far East, and went to the Miss World pageant at the Royal Albert Hall in London, which was absolutely terrifying. There were 85 girls from all over the world, including this tiny little South African contingent. And I think it was just the sheer size of things for an 18-year-old from Natal to go to without the support that beauty pageants and beauty queens have today. We were virtually alone.
Shirley Latham was crowned in 1973. Beauty queen history was made when Anneline Kriel was offered the Miss World crown after the reigning Miss World was disqualified.
When I went to the Miss World competition, I think every girl that entered secretly wished that she could win the crown. But when I was there and I was very much in love with my boyfriend, we were ecstatic when I came second because it didn't interfere with our life so much. And then about 4 or 5 days after that, the Miss World organization came to me and said that the girl who won the Miss World had to resign and whether I would like to take the crown.
With the abdication of Helen Morgan, who won the Miss World title by 1 point,
The crown goes to Anneline Kriel, Miss South Africa.
Almal in die land is trots dat hierdie charmante blondine beskou word as die mooiste meisie in die wêreld. En ons wens haar alle sukses toe.
And that was an extremely difficult decision because I was reconciled by the fact that I came second. I was happy with that. And if I should now take the crown, it will change my life dramatically.
Returning home to South Africa now as Miss World, Anneline Kriel.
Bij een persconferentie gesels SA Speel met Anneline.
Welcome back to South Africa. It's good to see you.
Baie dankie, dit is heerlijk om terug te wees.
Anneline Kriel crowned Vera Johns, who was kicked out of Miss World. 1975 also saw the start of South Africa being represented by two beauties, Gail Anthony and Vera Johns.
When I went to the Miss World in November 1975 and the controversy started to build up, it appeared that I think the actual question was that how long had I lived in South Africa?
Rhoda Rademeyer, third in the Miss South Africa competition, replaced Vera Johns, disqualified in the Miss World competition.
Crystal Cooper was tweede, maar het die aanbod om as plaatsvervanger op te tree van die hand gewys.
I think, upset that I couldn't take part. It was the night before the final night, and I think that I had built up mentally, physically. You know, you've got to be absolutely prepared, and it was a big blow. It was, but you've got a pair of square shoulders, and you take it upon your shoulders and walk through. It was a tough time emotionally, but I was able to have a good cry the night before. I think when Julia told me and said, "Look, I'm afraid I have to ask you to stand down because this is what's at stake," and perhaps having been a former Miss Rhodesia, that could have been a grey area. Now I look at my life now as a different phase in my life, and I enjoy that because I think you've had your number of years in the city and your promotional aspect, and you're now promoting what is now our stud farm and our racehorses, and we breed racehorses commercially.
Cynthia Claassen from the Cape and Lynn Massyn from Natal won in 1976.
I don't think you can ever put the Miss SA experience behind you because there's always somebody at some stage that is going to recognize you. Even to this day, at least once every fortnight I can say someone will come up to me and say, "Are you Lynn Massyn from South Africa?" And of course I know exactly how old they are because they're from that generation. No, you can never put it behind you because it was such an integral part of my life, and it always will be. When I went off to the Miss World contest, there were two. There was Miss South Africa, who was myself, and Miss Africa South, Rosette Motsep. And off we went, two of us very excited and delighted to be going overseas for the first time. There was a huge controversy because there were two of us from South Africa, one black girl and one white girl. And they, unbeknown to us, countries were pulling out every day. Over a dozen countries withdrew from the competition merely because we were in it. And we weren't allowed to withdraw. We had to hold our ground. And all the girls were withdrawing, and there were death threats and bomb threats, and we had personal bodyguards. So on one hand, it was very exciting to have all the attention, but on the other hand, it was very confusing because we didn't really, to us there was no fuss. We were just two girls going off to have a jolly good time. It was also the start of where the world was focusing on South Africa and the apartheid and, the black and white issue. And that was probably the controversy. But, we got through it and we had a wonderful time, the two of us. We were never allowed to be photographed together. There was always another girl in between us, another country in between us. We never understood that at the time either. We were both young girls, were just going off together. To us it wasn't an issue.
Both the 1977 beauties, Vanessa Wannenberg and Glynis Vester, now live in Australia. Margaret Gardner and Yolanda Kloppers highlighted 1978. There was great triumph when the vivacious Margaret Gardner was crowned Miss Universe. She's now married and lives in California. Yolanda Kloppers looks back.
I was Miss South Africa 21 years ago, a very long time ago. Compared to now, it just seems such a vast difference. I remember it being in the old Coliseum, and hundreds of people, and and there was such a lot of excitement, and but it was so small. It wasn't on a big scale as it is now. Not at Sun City, surely not all the prizes the girls get now, surely not the exposures they get now. I certainly do think that they have a wonderful advantage now. I really worked hard, a lot of dieting, a lot of gymming, a lot of elocution, a lot of things that you have to work towards to. And yes, I mainly did it to better myself, to give myself a better chance in life. Vanessa Wannenberg was the last girl to enter the Miss World. And there was a lot of hoo-ha about the apartheid era, the apartheid in the country. And she had a terrible time during Miss World. And then Julia Morley said, South Africa cannot enter. A lot of countries boycotted South Africa. They sent me an invitation, but then said I can only attend and not enter the Miss World. It was a great disappointment. I thought that I would have done well. I really thought that. And normally South African girls do very well with Miss World.
Sunday Times journalist Doreen Levine has reported 18 Miss South Africa contests and chaperoned 7 winners overseas.
Vanessa Wannenberg's was the unhappiest trip of all, in the sense that she was so intimidated by learning that girls were being pulled off the stage by their governments because South Africa was on the stage. And it was a very, very unhappy time for her. And after all the drama and the sadness of realizing so many girls were sitting out of the competition and had been pulled out on the last day because she was still on the platform, she couldn't handle it. It was a very, very distressing time. And that was the end of us sending a Miss South Africa to Miss World until things changed in South Africa.
And that evening, man oh man, it was something we'll never forget. Yolanda Kloppers, last year's winner.
Ons het mos gesê sy is die mooiste, mevrou Suid-Afrika 1979 is 'n pragtige blondine uit Kaapstad, Sickel.
2 long-legged blondes snatched the 1979 beauty crowns. Sickel became the Sunday Times Miss South Africa, and reports Veronica Wilson represented us at Miss Universe.
Yes, often we were called together, in fact, and sometimes multiply.
And the nice thing was, because we shared a sponsor at the time, so it was, well, with the Report newspaper. We both belonged to Reporters, and then I was also tied up with the Sunday Times. So it was nice because you had that backup, and you knew a familiar face, which was also nice.
We also extended that further. We formed our own little company called Solid Pink, which was about 4 of us: Vera, Yolanda, Coelen, and myself. So we had many block bookings for all 4 of us.
It was a good year, but I had been a very successful model, and I enjoyed that kind of work. It was an easy job. I earned good money, and then suddenly I was thrust into this job where I belonged to a lot of sponsors, and I had a lot of bad publicity. I had a lifestyle which a lot of people didn't believe in, and so in hindsight, it was great. Maybe if I'd known that I would have had the kind of publicity that I had, maybe I wouldn't have done it. But in other spheres, things have worked out great.
Well, I have a similarity with Coelen, that we were both professional models before, and I'd been modeling overseas and earning good fees. And suddenly, first of all, you have a clothing sponsor who doesn't want you to do any other clothing company. Because they've given you this prize, they think they own you, and they don't pay you hourly rate that you would normally get for modeling, and you suddenly can't do any other clothing company for the whole year. So that's very expensive. I found that very expensive. But I don't want to be negative. I had a lovely time. I went all over the country to places where I'd probably never otherwise see.
Where we were mainly belonged to the newspapers, we were exploited in that way, and we had a lot of publicity, and we were out and about. I think today it's a business, and the girls are going out and they're making a good living.
Veronica crowned her successor, Jenny Kay, who arrived in Seoul, South Korea, to find herself banned from Miss Universe for political reasons. Now married, she lives abroad. Sandra McCrystal's legs carried R1 million insurance.
Well, I won the Miss South Africa in 1980, which is a good almost 20 years ago. I like to keep that part of it secret because people go, those 20 years have been a very eventful time for me. I do find that you can never really lose your title. People don't really want you to lose the title of Miss South Africa, and they expect a tremendous amount from you. And being in the public eye, they're always looking out for something that can happen to you, or, you know, they like to hear about you. They build you up a bit of media hype and then try and break you down again. But that's the bad side. And the competition has changed so much in the last couple of years. It's not the way it used to be then. The whole focus of the competition is not so much on beauty, it's more on community and being able to you know, do something for your country instead of just standing around being a pretty face. Although in my day, you know, people did expect you to have a brain.
I found that the year of 81 was a bit of a shambles.
It was.
Because the RSA and the Miss SA competitions were being split.
It wasn't really a good year. It
was a bad vintage.
Yeah, nothing was organised. Nobody looked after us. Even when I went over to New York, you didn't go overseas. So, I didn't get a chaperone. There wasn't anything organised. And then when I got there, I was sidelined anyway because
of the problems in the country.
The politics, you know, my whole presence there was in the balance. And they were more interested in me as a political sort of pawn debate rather than, you know, a participant in the pageant. We were just thrown. I got the feeling that we were just sort of.
I think for my side of it, I had a wonderful time because there was no Miss World for me because we had been banned a couple of years beforehand. So I basically went overseas on a holiday.
After that year was over, I changed course completely. My life took another direction. I've made my own career. I went back to university. I finished my degree, and I got involved in a business, and that's my life. Being Miss South Africa has had nothing to do with it.
I've actually downplayed the whole fact that I was a Miss South Africa. My daughter's 8 years old, and she only discovered last year that Mum was a Miss South Africa, which she's now terribly proud of. And the photos have been going backwards and forwards to school and to her mates. But it's almost not an embarrassment that you were Miss South Africa, because people look at you and they think, she obviously doesn't have a brain cell in her head, or she's just one of those beauty queens. And I didn't like feeling like that.
The mothers of Sandra de Meyer and Odette Scrooby were both beauty queens.
You know, I was only 18 when I was crowned. I'd grown up on a farm, and after I won the contest, I had to actually come and live in Johannesburg, which was very difficult for me. But being a farm girl, I was quite tough, or I considered myself quite tough, and I just sort of learned to swim. I think the expectations now are different, where the political situation has changed for the better. It was very difficult for me as an 18-year-old coming from the farm to explain why we had a political system the way it was. I think it was when I took part in the Miss Universe, it really was hard. As an 18-year-old, it was an emotional strain. People have no idea what you do go through there, and especially because it was held in a country where there was a civil war. You know, we were exposed as contestants to extreme poverty, and I really learned to become tough.
Obviously, any young girl is keen to enter it, but I really didn't have the faintest idea that I'd ever win, and it was a bit of a shock, and I still think they might have made a mistake, or it was just luck, or a fluke, or the wrong number called out, but I don't regret it, and it was a wonderful 2 years. I know it sounds strange, 2 years, but it was 2 years of a lot of fun. The negative things, I think people always believe that you're something that you're not. Even to this day, I'll be in a restaurant and someone will come and ask me, weren't you this Miss South Africa? And, you know, why is your hair not all done? Or so they expect something that doesn't exist. You know, you're just a human being. And I think people believe you're something that you're not. And that gets to me a bit. I think that's the negative side, is that, but you know, I chose to be in that business, so I cannot criticize the people if they do. You've just got to be kind and nice, but I think people expect too much of you.
Leanne Hosking won the title in 1983. She later married ex-Australian cricketer Mike Haseman.
I think the positive things are that you
you have a fantastic year that not many girls in life actually experience. You meet wonderful people, you do very nice work, you make some money, you know, you make your contacts and you can set up a platform for whatever you want to do next. But then there are also the negatives. The negatives of winning Miss South Africa for me are that it throws you completely off your chosen career path. And I still have a regret about that today, because you never go back. You always say, I will, but you don't. You get involved in all sorts of other things. I was studying law and I wanted to be a lawyer, and I would still like to be a lawyer.
The 1984 beauties were Letitia Sneeman, now living abroad, and Lorna Potgieter.
Well, Miss South Africa, for me, it changed my life completely. One day I was a math school teacher, and the day after I was crowned, you got instant celebrity status, and you're recognized, and you've basically just got so many opportunities that are open to you that, for me, it was the biggest change in my life. Suddenly, I was thrown in at the deep end with Miss South Africa title, which has all the associated career opportunities following it. And I was just lucky. I've used the Miss South Africa title to further my career, which I'm doing today.
Well, I entered Miss South Africa 3 times because the first 2 times I came runner-up, and it's always been very important for me to win the title. I've always looked up to the Miss South Africa crown ever since I was a little girl, so that was a big goal that I set out for myself. And when I did enter Miss South Africa in 1985, I won it after trying for the 3rd time. And I let a couple of years go by. About 3 years after the Miss South Africa title, in 1988, I decided to enter the Miss Germany contest. And that all came about because I speak German at home. I have a German passport, and I had on a number of occasions worked in Germany, so it wasn't a problem. And of course, through the Miss Germany contest, I was able to enter Miss Universe. So I finally got to the Miss Universe contest. So I had a lot of people wondering, well, what is she about? She's leaving South Africa, and she wasn't proud to be Miss South Africa, but it wasn't like that at all. I think Miss South Africa was always something I'd dreamt about entering, and it was a very big thing in my life, and it sort of put the cherry on top. But because I couldn't participate, I couldn't get any further. That is why I really wanted to enter the Miss Germany contest, and that was a way for me to get to an international competition.
Well, I suppose the best memory of all is the moment that you win, which is just so fabulous and such fun and wonderful for my whole family. And then after that, it's a bit of a whirlwind, really. But it gave me a confidence that I know I wouldn't have had otherwise. And it opened doors for me that I know wouldn't have been opened otherwise. I missed out on Miss World and Miss Universe, and yes, if I have a regret, it's that. I would have liked to have seen how far I could have got in that field. But all in all, there was plenty to keep me busy at home. I think you learn after you've entered to value your privacy. It's not something that anybody can prepare you for, is your loss of privacy. And once you've lost it, then you want it back. But yes, I think it's fair comment to say that if you're going to put yourself on a pedestal, then expect to be knocked off it a few times.
The morning I woke up before the judging, I just thought, well, this is the day. You're going to have a great chat with everybody else. It's not an exam. You can't fail it. There's no failing in this business. There's only a winner. That's all. And that's how I approached it, and I just enjoyed it. I think it was my age. To be quite honest, if they didn't choose me, they would have been very silly. No, I think it was my age, the fact that I had a degree, the fact that I've been well-traveled at that stage already, have been fairly self-confident, had very good general knowledge because I was interested in whatever affairs was happening, daily affairs. Maybe maturity, and I never regret entering, but I gained a lot of experience as a person, but it was a very, very tough year.
Janine Botbale became a happily unmarried mother. Michelle Bruce had to overcome anorexia and other obstacles during her controversial reign. Suzette van der Merwe has remarried and lives in Miami. Janine Botbale's sister, Diana Tilden Davis, came 3rd when Miss World lifted the ban. Amy Kleinhans was the first Miss South Africa after our racial laws changed, allowing all South Africans to enter.
I was approached by my agency at the time. I was a university student, and I've been modeling just for part-time money at the time, and they asked me, Amy, you've been with us for a while. Why don't you enter the Miss South Africa? And I said, actually, now you're going down the wrong road here. I'm not a beauty queen. I've never envisaged to be. I've never entered another competition, any other beauty competition in my life. Why would I want to do the Miss SA? And I actually entered in 1991. And I was runner-up to Diana Tilton-Davis. And then in 1992, I re-entered because that was the official last year I could enter because of my age. And I won Miss SA in 92, August 92, when I was 24. Politics was a big thing in my year that they were looking for. Whether you were competent with speaking to politicians, whether you understood the dynamics of what was happening in South Africa. When I went to Egypt, for instance, I had to go and see the Minister of Trade and Tourism and speak to him about renewing bridges with Egypt and South Africa. So I think they were looking for a completely different dynamic in a girl, and also a very good, well-balanced girl. She had to have a little bit of the prettiness and a little bit of the charm and a little bit of the sensibility and a good all-rounder. And I suppose in 1992 I was it.
Sowetan-born Jackie Mofokeng came second in the Miss World contest.
When I did enter, I didn't even tell anybody. I just went to the Sunday Times, took a picture and filled the form in. And I didn't expect to get this far. Maybe that's the reason why I enjoyed it so much. And when I did win, it was a shock. I actually don't remember that moment because I went blank, totally. I was the first black Miss, I am the first black Miss South Africa. So there were a lot of controversial interviews. I mean, people asking me ridiculous questions. But I handled them okay. I don't know how. I always say that because there is a God, you always get through things that you never thought that you'd get through. There were a lot of people who were accepting, but there were other people who could not accept having a black Miss South Africa. There were times when I did a radio show. This is just one example. I was on 702, and a lot of people were calling in and really congratulating me on having won. But there were still some people, well, one woman in particular from Benoni, she called in and she said, oh, Jackie, well, I don't think that she's a good Miss South Africa. She has big teeth and a big bum. Okay, but that's stereotypic. I don't have a big bum, but because I was a black woman, she expected me to have a big bum. And that's what she said on national radio. So there were some people who were really spiteful towards me because I'm black, not because of me as a person.
I entered Miss South Africa. It was just a spur of a moment decision, really. I didn't intend to do it. It's actually my mother and my sister who forced me to enter it. My sister entered it in 1992. She had such a ball of a time, and she got Miss Personality. And she always said to me, well, I should have won, so what's going to happen? You're going to grow old and you're going to win this title for me. The most positive thing that's come out of me having been crowned Miss South Africa in 1994 is actually, there's so many things that I could name. But for one, it gave me an opportunity that I know I otherwise wouldn't have had in terms of where my career is at the moment. And I think I was crowned at a very significant time as well in South Africa in 1994. Democracy had just been born, and there was so many changes happening. And I was part and parcel of that. I was given an opportunity to experience something that no institution could teach you. But I think over and above everything that happened to me in that year, it gave me an opportunity of a lifetime. It was like a launching pad, really, to achieve greater things and to move on to doing even bigger things, so to speak. I want to look back 10, 20, 30 years from now and be glad that 1994 happened for me, that the year that I was crowned was significant, and that my life changed for the better. It'd be a great distress, so to speak, if I look back and I've hated my life because of Miss South Africa.
The lineup of Miss SAs for the past 25 years is a reflection on exactly what the society is doing. Some are divorced, some have 7 children, some are not married by 42, some are out of the country. They're mothers of 3 and they've got their own careers going. They've moved on from their teenage years. And many people actually don't realize that many of the girls were chosen at 18, 19 years of age. And now they're 38 years old. And that was something they've done. They've been there, literally designed the T-shirts. And now that they choose to not be in the limelight, I think that's their own prerogative. And stop being so hard on us. And that, I think, also brings in why many of the South Africans choose not to be interviewed. They choose not to be exposed.
I think you don't have a choice. I've always said that you're your own manager, but you cannot just cut off the public. You were a public figure. People look up to you. You chose to be in this field. You represented a country, and they feel that you're part of their life.
I do think I owe the public of South Africa. First of all, they gave me a wonderful year. Secondly, up till today, they received me well. But there's also a cutting off point. I will do certain charitable functions with pleasure. But my life has changed as such that I have a family, I have a husband, and I have a child, and I'm going to have a second child. So that comes first.
I think as in South Africa, you're a national asset, and that alone, I'll speak for myself. You do feel that you have a duty to the public. Not that you're obligated, but it's a personal thing. For me, I feel that I have a duty to the South African community at large, because firstly, of the support they've given me.
Well, I've never allowed public opinion to affect my life in any way. I would say a great big thank you to the public of South Africa for all the support they've given me over many, many years. They've certainly kept me on my toes, I suppose. And it's wonderful when people come up to me and ask me if I'm Penny Coelen or if I'm related to Penny Coelen. And they have just been really very, very supportive and very wonderful, and I can only thank them.
You know, in the early days when Penny won and many after me, we won by public vote. And I think that is something that's been taken away from the true meaning of being a Miss South Africa. You have not been chosen by Miss South Africa anymore. You've been chosen by David Hasseldorf and some famous person from overseas, which really has no relativity to me as being the girl that the South Africans have chosen.
Well, I think what Moya Meaker said is a lot of truth in it, because, you know, it is, you are representing your country, and why not give the people of the country the chance to vote for you?
You know, when I won the competition, and I think when Penny won the competition, and possibly people in the 60s and 70s, I think we entered the competition because we believed we were beautiful enough to win it, and our beauty was, you know, general enough, inner and outer and intellectual beauty too.
I like being called a beauty queen because I'm not a beauty queen, I'm a pageant winner. I'm so adamant about that. Who look at pageant winners as brainless people who are not capable of doing anything but wave and smile, and that's not true. We did have a life before then, and we did have a life during our reign at Miss South Africa, and we do have a life now and brains.
I would like to believe that I wasn't chosen only on looks. I'd like to believe that I was chosen on my intelligence.
Sometimes the pressure of being in the limelight is quite hard, and it's quite nice when you get married and you can now hide behind another name. Or when you get a bit older, people don't always recognize you. But they do recognize you sometimes when you least want them to, like when you're pushing your trolley around the supermarket or something.
They were short of girls in Durban. So the friend of mine was the PR lady for Rapport, and she said, oh, won't you just send a photograph, and we just need more entrants. So I entered, and then I found I was involved in the regional finals, and then I was Miss Natal, and then I was entered, and then I was entering in the Miss South Africa. And I think I was the only one among the finalists who had a university degree, and I think they were worried at that time because there was so much politics involved with the Miss World, and they wanted somebody who they thought could handle all the interviews.
I think that they've combined the beauty pageant with really sort of more of an ambassadorial role today, which is maybe not totally focused on beauty.
I don't know if it's a different era, but I still feel that beauty queens are beauty queens, but I feel that there's something lacking in the beauty queens these days. It's all in the actual pageantry of it.
You know, I might not have been the most beautiful of the Miss South Africas or have married the richest man, or But I'm very, very happy in myself, and I'm happy with my life, and I love my kids, and I feel fulfilled with my business and my life. And so for me, it's just a very natural thing to be able to remember being Miss South Africa and maintaining it, because it was a wonderful experience.
I think that you change the set of judges, and the next day put the same girls in that situation and somebody else will win. It's just, you know, it's your lucky day. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's the way you answer the questions on the day. And you know what? It's not the most beautiful girls in South Africa who are in the Miss South Africa competition. Walk down the streets of Cape Town or on the beaches of Durban, you will see far more beautiful girls.
There are millions of pretty girls in the world, in the country. You just go to Clifton Beach, you'll pick up 10 in 5 minutes. But you have to then go further. From those pretty girls, choose now somebody who can do the job.
What pulled me through was probably my ability to communicate with the judges. I think that's what did it for me, because I was by no means the most beautiful girl there.
This is a very interesting question, because it is a beauty contest, and as in some instances with certain people are anti-beauty contests, and it's for some people, you know, the 90s woman and the feminists and whatever, they don't like it. And they've tried to cover it up a little bit and turn it into sort of, you know, you're an ambassador and let's not have swimwear competitions and take that away and whatever. And I think that's completely wrong. You have to be true to it. It is a beauty contest. Obviously, you have to be intelligent. You have to have PR skills, be able to hold a conversation, do certain public speaking engagements. But at the end of the day, you also have to be good looking and you have to have a good body. And if I judge a competition, I want to see that girl in swimwear. It is a beauty contest. I mean, that is what it is. And if you don't like that, don't enter and don't watch it. Obviously, you can't sort of be an airhead, but I mean, that's the main focus. You can't hide from that.
I think people like to put too much emphasis these days on the fact that they're looking for brains and they're looking for all these intelligence and all this sort of thing. Yes, I think a girl has to have more to offer than just a pretty face. But first and foremost, you're representing your country in an international pageant, and everybody's looking at you as a beauty queen. So I still think beauty is obviously something which is a major part. I think more important than necessarily brains and how many degrees you've got.
We had entered this competition because it was a beauty competition, but now they seem to want to call themselves something else, as if they're actually ashamed of the fact that that they are a beauty queen who's been in a bathing costume and been in a parade and done all the things that beauty queens do. So I have difficulty in actually understanding why they're not just happy to be Miss South Africa and why they need to have the extra PhD that they're an ambassador. They're not.
If you don't want to call it a beauty contest and you want to make as though you're just a great ambassador and you're there for your country and the looks don't matter and the body doesn't matter and it's all about how wonderfully intelligent you are, then you must call it Miss Ambassador or Miss something else. You mustn't call it Miss South Africa or Miss Venezuela or Miss Universe or Miss World.
One lady came up to me and you could see she was a really verkrampt Afrikaans lady, really. And she came up to me and she took my hand and she said, "Jackie, I remember when you were crowned, I thought that the world had come to an end." These are her words. She says, "I'm a racist Afrikaans woman." And I hated that moment, but I'll be honest with you. You have done South Africa really proud. I am so proud of you and I'm glad that you're in South Africa. I cried. I cried right there with the cameras and everything. I couldn't. I mean, even now I have tears in my eyes.
How could I defend apartheid in those days? There were many questions which I just wished I could have just run a mile and run home, because I just wasn't prepared to answer those questions.
In my time, though, I can honestly say, look, there was a lot of negative things in that. There's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of bitchiness. People are always trying to pull you down or see you fall. And when you're in the public eye, people want to see you fall. They're actually waiting for you to fall so that they can rub their hands together in glee and say, "Oh, look, it's not all so wonderful, is it?"
Oh, there's plenty of wrong moves that I made. Most of them, I think, is trusting people too easily.
From the moment Anneline Kriel became Miss World, she was treated as royalty. The public, including the press, was obsessed with her private life and demanded to know everything about her lifestyle.
But I always quite like those hard moments, those terrible moments, because I find I really sort of looked into myself. I really sort of,
emotionally grow.
Because you're supposed to be a celebrity, which is this country's celebrity, but I think anywhere else in the world, a Miss South Africa or a Miss World or whatever is not really a celebrity, it's just another person, because there's so many other celebrities around. But I think the stigma is attached that you rely on your looks, you rely on things that God's given you, but you don't rely on you as a person, and you rely on your outer beauty and not your inner beauty.
People didn't take me seriously. I mean, I'm a pharmacist, I'm a woman of 28, and I've just done modeling, and I've just done a reign as Miss South Africa. Why don't they take you seriously? Why don't they think you can actually achieve anything else than just be a beauty queen? But I found that it was extremely frustrating, especially from the male population, to be taken seriously. The men sort of just laugh you off, and then the women are hypercritical.
The girls are very professional now, and they make sure that their figures, their face, their hair, their elocution, the total package of how they present themselves is very professional now. Far more than it was in you know, you were probably looking for a lovely, new, fresh, natural beauty, sort of not off the farm or someone new. But now those girls who enter are totally prepared. You won't floor them. Mm-mm.
In those days, we made no money out of being Miss South Africa at all, whereas today, it's a business.
At the time, I was earning, I think it was 500 Rand an hour. And that's 12 years ago, so 500 Rand an hour went a long way 12 years ago. We had fabulous prizes. At the time, they were considered unbelievable, as today's prizes are considered incredible. And I won a car, and you are sponsored literally from top to toe.
The total of my prizes was 70,000 Rand, which, comparable to today, you're dealing with R1 million, I think. It's absolutely huge, and yeah, it's much bigger today, so I'm talking for us older girls.
But I didn't get a car. Like every winner gets.
We never got paid for anything.
No, we didn't.
I remember I was sponsored by Bristol Myers, who we had got Shape. It was a Shape drink that you mixed with milk, and I had to eat that. And then I couldn't afford the milk that I had to buy in the hotel, so eventually I went on to Sustagen because you could mix that with water. You didn't have to eat.
We didn't get a lot of money. I mean, I think my total winnings might have come to 30,000 if you add up the car.
Which you didn't have money to put petrol in.
Yeah. Well, there was no income, you know. Most of the shoots you were doing, okay, they were flying you around free of charge and sorting out the accommodation, but there was no cash involved.
Handing over.
You were actually just working for
Bristol Myers, Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, for your sponsors, paying back for the car and, you know, whatever it is that we won.
I won my first car when I was 16, and I remember winning it, and I didn't have a driver's license. I had to actually get my father, had to fly down to the coast and come and drive my car back up to Johannesburg for me. And I just thought it was an easy and a fun way of making money.
And if I look at the girls that's won in recent years and I see how they grow through the year, it's fantastic to see that. You know, it's that they really get schooled and skilled and refined through the year. And at the end of the year, they're actually far more interesting and more beautiful than they were when they started. But I guess that just comes with age and experience.
These are some of our lovely girls, the famed, the fated, and the forgotten. Some spoke to us, and some refused. But for our racial laws, we could have seen an entirely different lineup of beauties. While the media reflected their glamour and excitement, behind the scenes they often dealt with tears, anger, and starvation. Doors leading to dream careers and wealthy marriages swung open for some, but they all shared the same coveted title, Miss South Africa.
I'd say majority of people in my life today don't even know I was Miss South Africa. And I don't want them to know.
100%.
Because then they measure me against that.
Not only that, it wasn't a priority. It was a job that we were lucky enough to be able to do, chosen to do. We did it, and now we're doing other things.
We've been criticized by people like, can I say it?
By other beauty.
Janie Allen, okay? Oh. I discovered from the newspaper she had entered, and her entry landed up on the floor, never got to the final, so nobody ever knows she entered. But she's the first to criticize. She is a reporter. She's intellectual. She is cognitive. We are dumb beauty queens.
100%.
Unfair. I went to the same university as her, got the same degree. I won. She landed up on the cutting floor. But she can stand and criticize. Sour grapes often.
But I also want to say that I have found 1 or 2 ladies that were queens still want to be queen. And still behave queen.
That's another problem.
And still do queen. And the priorities are, well, I just cannot give up on this beauty queen, on the image, on the looks, and this is their life.
I think, first thing, if you want to enter the Miss South Africa pageant, try to have a career or some form of qualification, because it is only 12 months and it does end. And you need to know where you're going to be or what you're going to do post your Miss South Africa title.
I still believe that there has never been a Miss South Africa that experienced what I experienced, and there will never be a Miss South Africa that will experience what I experienced. For me, it was a unique time. It was a unique experience.
John Casablancas, when I won Miss South Africa, he was a judge. And he had a classic statement. He said, I was looking for a girl who would walk into a room and make heads turn. And I think that sums up what a Miss South Africa really is. It's a girl who, when she walks in, people should notice her. And she should have something worthwhile to say. She doesn't have to compete with the chairman of a leading company, but she needs to know how to hold a conversation and to hold her own in a room of educated people. But she doesn't need to be a rocket scientist.